A barista poses as her twin sister for a lucrative escorting gig with a wealthy client, only to uncover a web of dark and dangerous secrets. At a coffee shop, baristas Nina and Polly hustle to keep up with the orders. Amid the rush, Nina's favorite customer Curtis arrives. Moments later, they slip into the back room for a quick session, as has become their routine. After their shift, the baristas gripe about their meager tips. When Nina brainstorms ways to boost the shop's earnings, Polly quips she should just buy the place. As Nina closes shop, she receives a text about her twin sister Victoria's engagement. Days later, Nina reluctantly attends the engagement party at their wealthy parents' home. Surprised by her presence, her parents reveal her sister doesn't want her there. But Nina explains it's Victoria's fiancé Ryan who invited her. As Nina had anticipated, her parents begin comparing her to her twin, raving about how successful Victoria is now. Just then, the bride-to-be makes a grand entrance, officially kicking off the party. Nina later confides in her cousin Penelope that she dropped out of law school and is $150,000 in debt. When Penelope brings up their family's wealth, Nina insists she won't accept handouts, especially from Victoria. Sensing the tension between the twins, Penelope probes further, but Nina only admits they've grown apart. Penelope then reveals Victoria had already chosen her bridesmaids, disappointing Nina, who wasn't picked. When Penelope jokes about mixing up the twins, Nina proudly shows off her new infinity tattoo, something her sister doesn't have. At a bar, Nina drowns her frustrations in drinks. Already grumpy, she's caught off guard when the bartender remarks how dressed down she is than usual. Though confused, she simply brushes off the comment and asks for her bill, only to learn it's already covered. The bartender then gestures toward a man named John, waving at them from across the room. Nina doesn't recognize him but plays along to avoid paying. Eventually, she approaches him out of curiosity. Assuming she's joking that she doesn't recognize him, John says he misses her and surprises her with a diamond-studded bracelet. Though still baffled, the cash-strapped Nina gratefully accepts it. As they embrace, Victoria suddenly walks in. The twins then lock eyes, and Victoria gestures for Nina to follow. Startled, Nina pulls away, excuses herself, and follows her sister. In the bathroom, Nina realizes the bartender and the man mistook her for Victoria and accuses her of having an affair. Victoria, however, counters that he's just a work client. Eventually, though, she admits she's been working as an escort and not as a consultant, like she told their parents. She then defends her decision, explaining she turned to escorting out of desperation and only works with ultra-wealthy clients. Victoria adds that her fiancé has no idea and insists she's leaving the business for good after saying goodbye to regular clients like John. Before leaving, Victoria implores Nina not to tell anyone. The next morning at the coffee shop, Curtis vents about his overdue promotion. When Nina suggests he ask for it, he insists it's not that simple, but she encourages him to try. That evening, Victoria visits Nina at her apartment with a proposition. She explains she's cut ties with all her regular clients, but has one last booking, a VIP offering $5,000 per hour. The client has already paid a deposit and expects the date, but it conflicts with Victoria's vacation with her fiancé. Victoria then suggests Nina take her place and pretend to be her. Victoria would keep the deposit, while Nina keeps the hourly pay and any tips. Intrigued but wary, Nina asks if intimacy is involved. Her twin, however, quickly assures her it's strictly companionship. Victoria then emphasizes that she stands to make about $30,000. To sweeten the pot, she also allows Nina to keep the bracelet John gave her. Considering her financial problems, Nina eventually agrees. In preparation, Victoria lends Nina an elegant dress and briefs her on the client's background. His name is David Lynx, CEO of Lynxel Inc. He's renowned for his charitable initiatives and connections with various billionaires. Yet, despite his success, he's a bit of a recluse. Before Nina leaves, Victoria hands her a phone where David can call her. That evening, Nina arrives at the hotel to meet the client. She's greeted by one of David's bodyguards who leads her to his suite. Spotting a backgammon set, she reaches for it but freezes as David enters, his commanding voice warning her not to touch it. As they sit for a drink, David immediately senses how nervous Nina is. While he attempts to open a bottle of whiskey, he spills some on his shirt. When Nina instinctively tries to help, he snaps and storms off to change. Hoping to salvage the disastrous start, Nina pours drinks for them and resets the backgammon board. When David returns, he notices what she did. Realizing her genuine interest in the game, he invites her to play. Meanwhile, two men quietly subdue David's security and take a peek inside his suite. Upon spotting Nina, they left satisfied, having identified their target. After playing, David and Nina now find themselves more at ease with each other. Curious, Nina asks why he hires escorts if he isn't seeking intimacy. David explains that he values companionship and views intimacy as a distraction from his pursuit of power. They then spend the rest of the night playing some more. The next morning, Nina wakes to find a different bodyguard in charge of her. When she asks about the one from the previous night, he simply shrugs and tells her to pick up her payment. Nina can barely contain her excitement upon realizing she made $50,000 in a single night. Later that day, Nina leaves a proud voicemail for Victoria. Her excitement fades, however, when two men arrive, the same ones who attacked David's security the night before. Introducing themselves as FBI agents Peterson and Bruno, they question her connection to David. Caught off guard, Nina denies any ties but falters when they reveal she was seen in his suite. The agents then reveal their purpose. They need an informant within David's circle to uncover details about his plans to sell Linksel. They add that these are potential criminal activities that they need to monitor. Nina insists she won't be of much help, but the agents push back. They note that David had just spent more time with her than he normally does with other escorts, suggesting she's already gained his trust. Before leaving, they make it clear they'll be in touch, leaving her little choice in the matter. Soon after, Nina gets a text from David, asking to spend the week with her and telling her to name her price. Before she can respond, though, her sister Victoria unexpectedly shows up, with her vacation cut short. Nina then reveals that the FBI just dropped by. This causes Victoria to worry since she's previously stolen money from her clients and assumes the visit has something to do with it. However, Nina clarifies it's about David. She later boasts about his offer to spend the rest of the week with her for whatever price she wants. Intrigued, Victoria proposes taking over, arguing it would help avoid further complications. Nina, however, fires back, pointing out that it's her personality David's drawn to, something her twin won't be able to mimic. Acknowledging her sister's point, Victoria reluctantly agrees to let Nina keep the gig and work with the FBI, but insists on helping her prepare more thoroughly. Among the things Victoria teaches Nina are how to navigate the hotel emergency exits and self-defense techniques in case trouble arises. She also provides her twin an earpiece so she can coach her in real time. At the coffee shop, Nina updates Peterson about her next meeting with David. Later, Curtis arrives and invites her to his upcoming birthday party. He also shares that he took her advice and emailed his boss about his promotion. News that leaves the barista ecstatic. That evening, David beats his bodyguard to death, accusing him of betrayal. Meanwhile, the twins prepare for the date, with Victoria ensuring that Nina's earpiece is working. When Nina arrives, David surprises her with designer clothes before taking her to an upscale restaurant he's rented out exclusively for them. As their meal winds down, Nina casually asks about the bodyguard from her first night with David. Choosing his words carefully, David admits he let him go due to trust issues. Prompted by Victoria, Nina then shifts the topic to his business. David reveals plans to sell company shares as part of a restructuring strategy and reflects on his journey from struggling analyst to business mogul. He vaguely mentions using illicit substances early on, later striking a deal with his suppliers, who provided the seed money for his empire. David later brings Nina to a photography setup he prepared and starts taking pictures of her. He eventually notices her infinity tattoo, prompting her to explain that it symbolizes new beginnings after failing law school. Getting more comfortable, Nina shifts to more alluring poses and invites David for some intimate moment. After setting the camera to automatic, he approaches and obliges. Their moment, however, is interrupted when the camera's shutter jams. While David develops the film, he receives a message about his ex-CFO's smear campaign against him. Enraged, he hastily leaves to handle it, unintentionally locking Nina inside. Fortunately, his bodyguard lets her out and takes her home. The next day, Nina reassures Victoria that David didn't harm her. However, Victoria warns her to be cautious, revealing that a former client described David as a dangerous man. She then invites her twin to her bridal shower. Polly later informs Nina that Curtis dropped by. Realizing she missed his birthday party, she later heads to his house for an intimate afternoon. Afterward, Nina immediately gets up to leave. Feeling dejected, Curtis tries to talk about the status of their relationship. However, Nina brushes it off, assuring him they're fine as they are. The next day, Nina meets David for another date. However, she quickly notices he's also expecting someone else. David explains he has a brief meeting with a mid-level employee who emailed him directly, a move he admired enough to grant a face-to-face. Moments later, the employee arrives, and to Nina's shock, It's Curtis. Though startled to see her with David, Curtis quickly composes himself and introduces himself professionally. Unaware of their connection, David introduces Nina to Curtis before instructing him to share his qualifications and his ideas. When David asks what inspired him to email, he admits it was the girl he's seeing who encouraged him. When David becomes handsy with Nina, Curtis gets distracted. Nevertheless, he regains focus, delivering an impressive pitch. Ultimately, David decides to promote him. Later, Nina rushes to her parents' house for Victoria's bridal shower, but arrives too late. Penelope then assumes the traffic on the bridge delayed her. When Nina confirms, her cousin reveals that the traffic was caused by a body found floating in the river. She later shows Nina a photo of the dead person. To Nina's shock, it's the bodyguard from her first night with David. That evening, Nina meets with the agents again, now more convinced than ever that David's a criminal. Peterson subsequently assigns her next mission, obtaining a copy of David's speech for the upcoming Linksel Gala. They suspect he'll announce major restructuring plans and need the details in advance. Before parting, the agents promise this will be her final task. The next day, Nina visits Curtis, determined to clear the air. She insists there's nothing romantic between her and David, adding that her role as an escort involves no intimacy. With Curtis unconvinced, Nina eventually confesses her feelings for him. Curtis then admits he's always wanted to ask her to be his girlfriend, but lacked the courage. When Nina urges him to ask now, he hesitates, worried about David's reaction. In response, she promises him David will never find out, adding that she plans to cut ties with him soon. At dinner, the family discusses wedding plans, while Nina sits back, disinterested. When Ryan notices this, he attempts to involve Nina. Deciding to stir the pot, Nina announces that Victoria helped her land a new job as a consultant. This makes Victoria uncomfortable, afraid that her sister might reveal her secret. Nina then mentions having a boyfriend who works at Linksel. Alarmed and assuming she's referring to David, Victoria quickly pulls Nina aside to the kitchen. There, Victoria scolds her for breaking the cardinal rule, falling for a client. But Nina clarifies she wasn't referring to David but to Curtis, another Linksel employee. Even more worried, Victoria warns Nina about the complications this might create. Nina, however, retorts that she can handle it before storming out. When Nina returns to David's suite, she's surprised to find Curtis, who's in the middle of writing the businessman's speech. Feeling awkward, Nina tries to leave, but David insists she stay. Curtis soon requests time alone to work, and his boss reluctantly agrees, offering pointers as he escorts him out. Seizing the opportunity, Nina hurriedly copies the speech onto a flash drive from David's laptop while the two men converse. After Curtis leaves, David confronts Nina about the obvious tension between her and Curtis. Suddenly, he grabs her neck, only to reveal he's kidding as he gives her a backgammon-inspired necklace. At Ryan and Victoria's apartment, he discovers her notebook with a detailed record of clients and earnings. As he flips through it, her secret life becomes painfully clear. Victoria tearfully apologizes, but Ryan can't get past her betrayal and breaks up with her. On her way to Curtis's apartment, Nina meets with the agents and hands over the flash drive containing David's speech. While satisfied, they inform her the job isn't done. When Nina protests their escalating demands, they threaten her with criminal charges unless she complies. They then order her to keep David confined to his hotel room until after they review the speech. To assist, they hand her a pair of handcuffs, urging her to get creative. At Curtis's place, Nina is greeted coldly as he fixates on David's speech. He later urges her to leave David now, but before she can respond, a call from the businessman interrupts. Believing she's already falling for her client, Curtis suggests it's probably best they part ways. Nina later returns home to find Victoria, who chastises her for leaving the door unlocked. Still reeling from her recent interaction with Curtis, Nina snaps back, blaming Victoria for the mess they're in. Victoria then reminds her of their shared past and reveals she's just broken up with Ryan. Unmoved, Nina suggests they resume keeping their distance, firmly stating she doesn't need Victoria's help. Shortly after, Victoria meets with John, asking for his assistance. When she inquires about David, John rants about his ruthless nature as a businessman. Curious, Victoria probes him about David's FBI case. To her shock, John reveals that David isn't under investigation. Instead, the authorities are after Peterson, a substance kingpin who once invested in Linksel before its rise to success. Still, even though David isn't under investigation, John reveals he's been building his own case against him and hands Victoria a folder with detailed evidence. Shortly before the gala, Nina arrives at David's suite to find him furious about a rat in his inner circle. Suddenly, her phone rings. It's Victoria, who's been desperately trying to reach her. To avoid suspicions, Nina immediately dismisses the call. Following the agent's orders, she begins executing her plan. Stripping to her underwear, Nina attempts to seduce David. However, David is able to push past the temptation, refocusing on his speech. Desperate, Nina pulls out the handcuffs, hoping to entice him further. To her surprise, though, David takes control, cuffing her to the bed and promising they'll celebrate after his speech. Just then, Peterson and Bruno barge in. When David questions how they found him, they reveal Nina as the snitch, leaving her stunned to discover they're not FBI agents. Peterson is in fact the substance kingpin who's also an early investor in Linksel. From Nina's leaked copy of David's speech, Peterson learns of the planned sale and David's resignation. Now, he's demanding half of Linksel's ownership before any sale occurs. He orders David to revise his speech, stay on as CEO, and delay the sale. He then instructs Bruno to accompany David to the gala to ensure compliance. He then turns to Nina and points a gun at her, declaring her useless now. Before he can shoot, however, David lunges at him, triggering a struggle, where David ends up shooting Peterson. Bruno then attacks David as Nina frantically tries to free herself from the handcuffs. Once free, she grabs Peterson's gun. As Bruno raises his arm for a fatal strike, Nina fires, killing him and saving David's life. At the gala, Curtis is greeting guests when Victoria passes by holding the folder from John. Mistaking her for Nina, he assumes she's ignoring him and calls her out. Initially confused, Victoria quickly realizes that he's Nina's boyfriend. Urgently, she tells him Nina's in danger and insists they head to David's suite immediately. Though surprised to know Nina has a twin, Curtis senses her urgency and agrees to go with her. Sometime later, David recovers from Bruno's attack. Upon seeing Bruno's lifeless body, he realizes Nina shot him. Nina nervously tries to explain that she thought the two were FBI agents. To her surprise, though, David commends her for saving his life. He then orders her closer while removing his belt. As she approaches cautiously, he slips it around her neck, as though he's now ready for intimacy. Suddenly, he begins choking her, enraged that she's been lying to him all this time. As Nina tries to fight back, David notices she doesn't have the infinity tattoo. When he demands to know her true identity, she defiantly declares she's not who he thinks she is. The real Nina then bursts in, knocking David out with a backgammon board. As it turns out, the twins switched places while David was out cold from Bruno's attack. Victoria posed as Nina to plant incriminating documents against him, while Nina and Curtis contacted the police. With the documents strategically placed beside the unconscious David, the twins hurry outside to join Curtis. They jump into the car and speed away, ensuring they're long gone before the authorities arrive. Victoria and Ryan eventually rekindle their relationship and marry a month later in an intimate ceremony, with Nina serving as maid of honor. Nina has also become the owner of the coffee shop where she once worked. After a heartfelt moment with Curtis, Nina shares a playful, light-hearted exchange with Victoria, grateful that the chaos they endured ultimately brought them closer together.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.